Hello, this is Lyle at UltiMAK, and we're told when you're running a YouTube channel it's good to have a lot of followers, and in fact a lot of times it's a good idea to make sure that your followers are well treated. That one's pretty well treated. So this is our installation video for our model M8 UltiMAK for the M1A M14. We're going to get right into it. This is a Springfield M1A standard, and I'll just start the disassembly process. Now, most of the time you can unhook the trigger guard with your hands. Some are a little more difficult to unlock than others, so you can use a round rod, a punch. In this case it's a Phillips screwdriver. You just pry that right open. Super easy. That pulls right out. We'll grab the rear side assembly and pop that off. And set the stock aside. Next we will remove the operating rod. So we have to compress that spring a little bit, just enough to let the rod come forward slightly. Move that retention pin to the outside of the rifle, and there it comes up. Just don't let it hit you in the eye. Next is to remove the op rod. And I've done this 100 times and it always gives me fits. There it is. So that should come right out. I'm going to go ahead and leave the bolt in place. We're not really going to be handling the rifle that much. Next is the handguard removal. And I like to use a nail set. It's a very small finishing nail set. Anything that'll fit in these little holes. And just pull it to the outside. Unhook that clip from the barrel. Do the same thing on the other side, and it's off. And this rather unattractive plastic handguard is going to be replaced by this beautifully machined UltiMAK mount. I'm just going to drop that in place, and not going to worry about alignment or anything much right now. I'm just going to put in the clamps and the recoil lug. This is the recoil lug with the step in there. It has a thinner side and a thicker side. You can see that. The thinner side goes toward the op rod guide, so toward the forward, toward the muzzle of the rifle. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and drop the screws in for that. You can see this mount has been installed before. I just took it apart earlier so I can show you how to put all this together. Now this is the one case with one of our UltiMAK clamps. It's not really a clamp. This is the op rod, well, it's the recoil lug. It's the one case in which the steel part is drawn tight up against the aluminum. That's because it's not a clamp. It's not holding the mount tight to the barrel, it's just serving as a recoil lug against the operating rod guide, that part. So I'm going to cinch these up tight, and you can see that the mount still moves. It's not a clamp. We can get into the physics of why an actual clamp should not touch the mount. It's so that you have clamping force and not just moving the steel part against the aluminum, right? You're moving it against the barrel, you're pulling the aluminum against the barrel. Okay, and this is the forward clamp. Just going to drop that in place. And I'll just get the screws started. I feel like I'm cross-threading that. I don't want to do that. There it goes. Please do not cross-thread the screws. And it's really easy to do on these little tiny buggers here with the rear clamps. I'm just going to do one, drop one clamp in there, make sure the screw holes are aligned. Get the little teeny tiny wrench. And here's where you want to be super careful not to cross thread. Okay, that one's going in. That one's going in fine. Next clamp. See, this is pretty simple. We're almost done. But there is a proper sequence here for the tightening. So don't ignore the proper sequence. So the proper sequence is, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to make sure the screws on the right hand side of the rifle, the clamp screws, mind you, that's these two and this one on the right hand side of the rifle, are good and loose. And then I'm going to tighten these up as far as they go. You know why? That is because this is how you're going to make sure that the clamps have some space between the bottom of the clamp and the underside of the aluminum mount. And you'll see. Right now, I'm closing that space all the way. Then I'm going to turn that back a half a turn. And I'm going to turn that back 1/2 a turn. And I'm going to turn that back 1/2 a turn. Now I'm going to start tightening till these start to firm up on the right hand side. Okay, now these are starting to firm up. That's starting to firm up. Now I'm going to, hopefully, nope, I did too far. You want to be able to rotate the mount on the barrel with some effort, but that it will stay put. And I want to align the top flat of the mount with the top flat of the receiver. Not super critical. Don't get out your machinist level, because if you do that, you're just chasing ghosts. You don't understand it. I've talked about this in other videos, but it is a fact. If somebody wants me to explain that in great detail, I can. I'm going to also make sure, by the way, got ahead of myself, make sure that that's pushed all the way forward so that not just visually but by feel, this recoil lug is hard up against the back of the operating rod guide. Okay, now pushing that forward as I rotate, I'm going to line that up with the top flat of the receiver. Now that's the position of the mount that you want. Now we're going to go ahead and finish tightening. I'm going to go just a little bit there, and a little bit there, and a little bit there, and a little bit there. So we're not wanting to drag the mount over one way or the other on the barrel. And get it good and tight. Good and tight. Okay, now you're not going to be able to reef on these little tiny screws the way you can on the number 10s. This is a 632 thread. The weak point in this is the head of the screw and that tiny little Allen wrench. It can be easy to round out, and so it's very important that you get that wrench seated all the way into that screw head and keep it there. And when you're putting torque on it, you keep it seated and don't let the wrench go at an angle off axis. You're going to tighten these good and tight, but in this case good and tight is a lot less torque than on a 1032 that's good and tight. You can go ahead and use blue Loctite on these, but we found in our testing if you tighten them properly they do not loosen. You have to be very careful though. Again, I can't overstress the importance of keeping that wrench properly seated in that screw head. We give you an extra screw in case, but if you round out one of these heads in the screw, you're going to have to get rid of that wrench and get yourself another one, because you've just compromised the wrench. You cannot allow that to be used again, because it'll be twice as likely to round out the next screw. Okay, that's all tightened down. Now we just want to check that there's no interference with the underside of the mount and the rifle stock. So to do that, let's go ahead and put the op rod and spring back together. This slips in pretty easily into place, or it should. If it binds, then pull it out a little bit like that. Get that hooked onto the bolt. Okay, now we want to snap that. It's over the bolt. We want to snap it into the receiver. There it goes. And it should go forward. There it is. Super easy. I'm just making it look difficult. Put the op rod and spring in. Again, I'm going to move this retention pin to the outside of the rifle. I'm going to hold the spring while I get that rod inserted into the op rod. Keep that out, push it in, you're good to go. Okay, now we'll put the stock back in, or put it back into the stock. Well, we'll just do a quick check. We've got good gap there. We have good gap front to back here. That's level with the receiver ring. This is good to go. And this should drop right in like so. And there it is. And isn't that much more beautiful than that? But better yet, it's a really good stable optic mounting platform for a scout scope or whatever kind of dot sight you want to put on there. And it actually will co-witness iron sights with something like an aimpoint micro or primary arms micro dot. And you don't need a cheek rest, an extra cheek riser, because the mount is so low and the optic is so low. Anyhow, there it is. Now it's time to install that optic and go out shooting. You zero it up and enjoy. Take care.